For nearly 2 years, players on 2B2T have secretly mapped and downloaded an enormous area of the server. The project covers roughly a 1 million by 1 million block area of the overworld, which is more than 1 trillion blocks of surface area. To put that into perspective, a 100,000 by 100,000 render might sound like it's only a tenth of the size of a million by million render, but because area grows in 2 dimensions, the million block project contains 100 times as much surface area. The final archive also contains separate downloads of the End and Nether, making this much more than just one giant map render. This is the story of how one of the largest Minecraft world download projects ever created was made in secret, why it was created in the first place, and what the team discovered while doing it. If you want to help me out, subscribing does a ton. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so YouTube can finally pay for my priority queue subscription, although no pressure. On 2B2T, downloading Spawn isn't a new concept by any means. In fact, for many years, people have downloaded smaller renders and sections of Spawn, specifically to preserve important bases and monuments, but nothing compares to the magnitude of 1 million by 1 million blocks. Considering that downloading a 100k by 100k world download is already considered a pretty impressive achievement, going all the way up to 1 million blocks is on a completely different scale. The project didn't actually start as a mapping project though. In June 2024, the players Fook and Crane started working on a large world download with the goal of finding bases and dupe stashes around Spawn. They initially relied on more traditional methods of finding these locations, but they eventually realized that instead of traveling around looking for individual bases, they could simply download the world itself and search through the data. In late 2024, the team had the technology necessary to make this work at a much larger scale. A major part of the project was the Elytra fly hack that allowed the bots to fly systematically across their assigned areas, while collecting the world data sent to them by the server. If the team's methods and Elytra fly hack became widely known, they risked Housemaster patching the flying method, so staying secret and hidden became extremely important. An area this large obviously can't be flown by 1 or 2 accounts, so the team used a large number of bot accounts running through BM proxy and operating continuously. The 2B2T Place project documents 28 bot accounts being used for the 512k project, with the bots flying across the area while the software controlled their routes. To store the enormous amount of information more efficiently, Crane also created his own save format called ZVCR, or ZSTD Compressed Version Controlled Region. This was incredibly important because storing millions of Minecraft region files normally would require a ridiculous amount of storage. The custom format allowed the team to store the area efficiently and made the huge archive far more practical to manage. After launching the bots, the 512,000 by 512,000 area was completed in only 17 days. At this point, the project had proven that this method could work on a scale that had previously been almost unheard of in the 2B2T community. Later, in June 2025, the team also took advantage of a period where the nether roof was accidentally accessible after a server update and deployed 6 accounts to download a 100,000 by 100,000 section of the nether. That download was completed in under a week, giving the team experience collecting data from another dimension and proving that the same system could be adapted beyond the overworld. As I stated earlier, the bots run through a proxy system called BM proxy and are controlled by custom autopilot software rather than normal player input. Instead of manually controlling every account, the team could assign different bots different areas and have them systematically fly through their own sections of the map. The million block area was essentially divided into a massive grid, with each account responsible for collecting data from its assigned region. The data they collected was then stored locally and organized into the ZVCR format rather than being turned into one normal playable Minecraft save. This process is part of what makes the project so impressive, because the difficult part wasn't just flying around for a long time. The team had to develop the software, keep the bots running, store the data, deal with missing sections, and repeatedly download areas that hadn't been captured correctly. The public release even contains tools for working with the data afterward, including Place Viewer, which allows the archived world to be viewed in-game, and other ZVCR tools that can convert the data into other formats or create a playable single-player world from a specific timestamp. Since players were able to see accounts flying systematically across the map, the team needed a cover story to stop people from interfering and griefing the bots. Fook and Crane knew that 2B2T players were already familiar with the idea of exploits being used to locate bases and track activity, so they created a fake explanation for the grid-like patterns. The story they promoted was that they had discovered a coordinate-related exploit that could supposedly track chunks and help pinpoint bases from a distance. The unusual trails left behind by the bots were then explained as those bots validating data related to this supposed exploit. This cover became known as Operation Fact Check, and it helped disguise what the team was really doing. While people in the community were trying to understand the supposed exploit and what it could do, the actual project was inconspicuously downloading enormous amounts of 2B2T in the background. The secrecy mattered because revealing the real purpose of the project could have attracted players who wanted to interfere with it. And if the flight exploit or the team's actual methods became widespread, the project could potentially have been shut down. Then, on Christmas Eve 2025, the full 1 million squared block project was initiated. By this point, the project was expanded from the original 2 people to a much larger group known as 2B2T Place. The goal was now to map a 1,024,000 by 1,024,000 section of the overworlds. During the time they were mapping the area with their bot accounts, they still needed to stay as hidden as possible from the rest of the server. The project therefore had to continue quietly for months, while the bots systematically covered the enormous area. Alongside the main overworld project, the team also downloaded a 256,000 by 256,000 section of the end in early 2026. The full overworld project eventually took 109 days to complete. On April 13th, 2026, the million block target was officially finished, and the final public archive contained the 1,024,000 squared overworld download, the earlier 512,000 squared overworld project, a 256,000 squared end download, and the 100,000 squared nether download. The combined public release was around 15 terabytes of highly compressed world data. The project even slightly exceeded its original million block target in some areas, with parts of the data extending around 537,000 blocks from spawn. This was an incredible feat, but there was still one last question. Why spend more than a year developing this entire system and secretly mapping one of the largest areas of Minecraft ever recorded? Mapping out 1 million by 1 million blocks isn't something done without a reason. The first is preservation. Using this tool, anyone can visit a location without traveling hundreds of thousands of blocks through the actual server, and bases or monuments destroyed by griefers stay accessible long after they're gone. 2B2T has spent over 15 years constantly changing, and pieces of its history disappear every time a base is griefed. An archive keeps most of that history alive, and even if the real server ever shuts down, we could still visit landmarks and monuments. Secondly, it works as a form of digital archaeology. With this much data collected, players can search for old bases, rare blocks, and forgotten trails that would be nearly impossible to find manually, and the team has already used it to dig up unusual block placements across the map. Data mining is still ongoing, and more downloads are already being planned.